Hello, listeners. For today's installment of the Ensnaring the Muse podcast, we have composer and music educator Paige Garwood, and among other things, we'll be discussing how to make music as a composer and generally catching up. So let's go. All right, Paige Garwood, how goes it?
It goes fine, my friend. It's going great. Like I said earlier to you, God's in charge, and I'm glad.
Right. And I figured we could get into the subject of the Almighty and his relationship to the creative process, maybe. So you are yet another installment of the Vermont College of Fine Arts Masters of Fine Arts in Music Composition alumni.
And I just discovered that that's a terminal degree.
Hey, imagine that.
So, I mean, I can't get a doctorate. Not that I'd want to, because holy crap.
God help you.
I know, right? Can you imagine a doctorate degree in composition? What an absolute nerd I would be at the end of that.
It's true. It's true. And not only that, but the gigantic waste of time that it would be.
Yeah.
Knowing that there are no jobs in higher ed anymore. So no full-time jobs anyway.
No. Oh, no. You have to be, what do they call those? Adjunct?
Yes. Yeah.
Which is, I think, comes from a Latin word that means will work for food.
Yeah. Or disposable. I always like the term contingent faculty, because
that's awesome.
Yeah, that I think is much more to the point about how unnecessary you are.
We're gonna have to strap the budget here a little bit.
Yeah.
What can we do? Well, Garwood can go. He's an adjunct.
There you go.
Michael can go. He's an adjunct, and he's hard to get along with. You rabble rouser.
You're not wrong. No. I just have to speak out against liberal politics. So
That's a career killer.
Yeah.
I hear you. I hear you. It's funny. I quit speaking out against liberal politics because they don't listen.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm one of when I was raising my kids, I tell them something that needed to happen one time. I tell it to them twice. And if they continue with the behavior, then I would let them suffer the consequences, whatever it was going to be.
Fair enough.
Son, don't touch the stove. Son, I told you, don't touch the stove. Go ahead, touch the stove.
Oh. let them experience their own corrective behavior. That's good.
Yeah. So we could go down the politics road, but let's not, because right now I'm in a pretty good mood.
Good. Well, I'm glad you're in a good mood. So let's talk about what composer, bassist extraordinaire, church musician, teacher, master Paige Garwood has been up to.
I like that, master. Yeah. That has such a nice ring to
it. Right.
Well, what I've been up to is trying to navigate the waters of making money with my musical skills. Okay. What all of us musicians are doing. I've been fortunate in the sense that back in 2001, I was working as an engineer at a satellite communications company. We had like a dozen satellites circling the globe, and we were responsible for transmitting programming all around the globe. My company built the network that got the Sydney Olympics to the United States. So I was an engineer in that respect, and music was just a hobby. Played a few gigs, just kind of slapping around. And then I ticked off the CEO. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. I ticked off my vice president by embarrassing the CEO at a company function where the CEO stood up and said, all right, I'm going to take questions now. You can ask anything you want. What is said here stays here. Dude, if you ever hear a CEO say that, first thought is, you're lying.
Right.
So I brought up something that potentially could embarrass the company that my guys had run into policy-wise. And he hemmed and hawed. He was very polite and nice. But after the meeting's over, my vice president called me back and screamed at me like we were like third graders on a school ground, right? And 2 weeks later, just our facility had a huge layoff. They laid off black people. They laid off white people. They laid off gays. They laid off straights. They laid off men. They laid off women. Any classification you can think of, they laid all these people off, including me. And 2 weeks following that layoff, everybody except me and the guy who stood next to me and said, yeah, what he said, everybody but us two was hired back into the same position with the same salary, everything. So there was nothing legally I could do.
Wow.
I mean, so, I was devastated, naturally, and I entered into bankruptcy. And I dropped all my money, withdrew all my 401k. Still shudder. Pulled my money out and started a video production company because I have a passion for video. Just because you have a passion for something doesn't mean you're good. Just let that be a life lesson.
Yeah. Or that it's profitable.
Oh, Lord, have mercy. Yeah. I did everything wrong. Within 6 months, I had thrown away every dollar that I had, and I was bankrupt. And so the only thing I could think of to do was I went to a local guitar store, and I hadn't played guitar at that point for like 20 years. I went to a guitar store and asked them, do you need a guitar teacher? I mean, it's a pretty ballsy move. I mean, you haven't played guitar 20 years and you're going to go teach guitar. I said, but you know what? Never up, never in, as my dad would say on the golf course.
Okay.
So I go, and he says, well, yeah, we need another guitar teacher, but I don't have any students for you. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do for you. I'm going to come into the store and I'm going to sit my butt back there in the guitar section. And I'm going to play guitar all day. And I'll answer questions for anybody who comes back there. I help them find their guitars, their basses, everything. I just want first run at them for students. He said, sure. So I would open up the store every morning, Monday through Friday, and I go sit in the guitar section and I played guitar 6 hours a day, getting my chops back. And then when I started getting students, I'd pick a book and I would stay a page or two ahead of them in the book.
Right.
No student, they didn't have the foggiest idea that I was so close to not knowing what I was doing. But so I started doing that, and I was only going to do it for short term till I get some money. And no other opportunities came up, and I discovered that I love teaching. Yeah. I discovered not only do I love teaching, I do have a knack for breaking down. This is the engineer side of me. I have the knack for breaking some really difficult thing down, whether it's a musical passage or a fingering pattern or whatever on the guitar fretboard. I have a way of breaking it down into bite-sized chunks and feeding it back to you one little bit at a time and building you into whatever it is you want to do.
Right.
So that's when I'd been teaching for about a year and a half. My brother, who worked at Microsoft at the time, calls me up and said, Paige, I got a guy at Hewlett Packard that owes me a favor. Please forgive me, but I sent him your resume. He says, all you have to do is walk in the door and a $75,000 a year job is yours. I said, oh, thanks. So I sat down with Glenda and said, look, this is what Pat says. This is what can happen. And she looked at me and said, I'm going to ask you a question that your dad would ask. Now, my dad had just passed away. My dad had been my North Star. Anytime a difficult thing came up, I'd always call him up and I'd ask him for advice. And he never gave me advice. He would ask a question and make me answer it. He would pull my advice out of me with the question. Very Socratic approach. Meyer said, I'm going to ask you what your dad would ask. Pretend that you're getting up tomorrow and you're going to go work at Hewlett Packard. What does your gut tell you? I said, I want to puke. Because I hadn't realized how much I hated corporate America. And I did it for the money. Dude, I was making six figures. So, you'll do almost anything for six figures. She said, and I told her I wanted to puke. She said, well, we've been poor before. We're poor now. We've done it. The kids are off in college on their own. She said, let's see if we can find a way to make music work. And she said, and the other reason is I don't want to be with you 40 years from now in an old folks home and hear you going, I shoulda, coulda, woulda. what would have happened what if I'd gone the music thing? Could I have made it? She said, let's find out and settle that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was 2001. And here I am, 2021, 20 years later, and I'm fully self-supporting as a musician.
That's cool.
And it's, now, if you had told me in 2001 that being a fully self-employed musician would look like what I'm doing now, I would have laughed at you. I honestly didn't think, I thought it was impossible to make a living as a musician anymore, because in my brain, I had this very narrow definition of professional musician. You're a gigging musician.
Right.
You do clubs, you do tours, you do recording. Yeah, performance.
Yeah.
Forgetting the fact that there's all these things out here.
Mm-hmm.
There's a million things you can do. If you adopt an entrepreneur's mindset, there's a million things you can do. So I started realizing, and I'd been an Amway salesman at one point. Now, before anybody starts laughing, I will never do it again.
I've met plenty of Amway salespeople, so
yeah. Now, but the one thing that Amway did right was they always had these seminars that you went to,
mm-hmm.
and if you didn't buy into the whole shtick about getting ultra motivated and filling stadiums up with people who chant your name, if you just would listen to these businessmen, they laid down some very valuable principles. And the one most singular valuable principle I learned was that to be successful as an entrepreneur, you can't have your eggs in one basket.
Right.
You can't have the one store. You need as many stores as you can get, because if this one store starts going belly up, then these guys can step up and take off the load.
Well, have you seen Sweetwater as a company?
Yeah.
Yeah, those guys are into everything.
Exactly. Diversity is what you need to do.
Right.
So I began to realize that I need, and that's one of the things behind multi-level marketing, which is totally correct in the business world.
Mm.
You want multiple sources of income. Now, your income source can be people, it can be buildings, it can be storefronts, it can be websites, whatever. You need multiple sources of income so that there's always this yin and yang thing happening. If something goes down, something goes up. And I started realizing that. So I was teaching at the One Music Store, and then I started teaching at a private music academy. I started teaching at another private music academy on a different day. And then I started teaching private lessons in another place. Mm-hmm. And then I would do the occasional studio gig. So I had income coming in from 5 different places. None of them enough to support me.
Right.
But collectively, all of a sudden I'm back to making 50, 60 grand a year at that time. And thanks to the bankruptcy, I was debt free.
Yeah.
After I paid it off.
That's cool though.
So 50, 60 grand a year when you don't have many bills is it lives well in Georgia.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I would imagine. But also, it sounds like the avenue that you came back to music was through teaching. And I have to tell you, that was, I started teaching music earlier in life, but that absolutely saved me. Because all of a sudden I had responsibilities. Like, I was a touring musician before that. Mm-hmm. And I very much lived the life of a touring musician. It was party hard and party often,
better living through chemistry.
Yeah, for sure. But then all of a sudden having to work with young people, I was like, holy crap, I've got to clean up my act.
Yeah. Oh, dude, isn't that the truth? I remember one time I was teaching this one academy, and this mother called me up. As I was teaching, I had this academy where I taught like 6 or 8 guitar classes a day, 10 students in each class. And I got this phone call from a mom. Now, homeschooling is huge in Georgia, and I got plugged into the homeschooling network.
Right.
And so I could probably get a job at any one of a dozen different places if I wanted to. But this mom called me up, Mr. Garwood, my son, and I heard this tone in her voice. I went, oh, no. My son said you used the S word in class today. Mm. Now, I was in the Navy for 16 years. There are a whole lot of S words that can't and should not be trotted out publicly. And I remember immediately my mind went into rewind. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, going to class by class. I couldn't remember what class the student was in. I'm going class by class by class. I'm trying to think, did I say the word? And she says, yeah, you did. you said stupid. We don't say stupid at my house.
Wow.
This whole wash of relief goes over me.
Right.
And I went, oh, ma'am, I am so sorry. I will never use that word stupid again. I apologize. I didn't know. Blah, blah, blah. I can't remember the rest of the conversation. I remember hanging up going, dodge that bullet.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I find that I love teaching.
Mhm.
And my sweet spot are middle school, early high school.
Right.
Prior to middle school, the young ones are too sensitive.
Right.
I'll make them cry. I just
Yeah,
will, because
but also
go ahead.
sorry. Oh, I was gonna say I don't know. I don't mean to sound too hyper traditional, but I think that men don't typically have the instinct for very young children.
That's a good spot. That's a good thought. I'm thinking, yeah, that's true, because I'm a black and white guy. There's no shades of gray with me. And now my wife, she's magic with the littles.
Right. Right.
But that's that maternal instinct thing,
Mm-hmm.
I believe. She's everybody's grandma. Everybody loves Mrs. Garwood.
Right. My mom's the same way. My mother's exactly the same way.
But with middle school, they're still young enough to think that school is cool.
Mm-hmm.
And they're old enough so that you can get stern if you need to.
Right.
And they're not going to run screaming out of the room.
Right.
And I love the early high school because I can pretty much bully them into what I need them to do.
Okay. Hey, it's necessary sometimes.
It is totally necessary.
Yeah.
I had a kid in class, a guitar class, and the rule was you come in, you sit down, tune your guitar, and then wait until class starts. This kid was just playing playing Smoke on the Water and everything like that. And he's just jamming and slamming and making a bunch of noise. And I told him to stop. He wouldn't stop. Told him to stop. He wouldn't stop. Finally, I said, John, put your guitar in the suitcase. He said, what? Put your guitar in the suitcase. We're going to go to the office. Mm-hmm. I've told you 3 times to stop and you won't. So he's a smart ass. This kid was wonderful. He actually later became a great friend of mine and I'll tell you, that's the end of the story. But anyway, he looks around the class and said, he's kidding, right? He's looking at the other students. And there was a kid across the room from him that just went. Right. So I said, come on, let's go. So we're walking out the door. Now we leave the classroom. We're walking down the hallway. And he goes, all right, this is the part where, all right, you pretend you chastised me and we're going to go back in and I'll say I'll be good and everything will be great, right? I said, no, we're going to the office. So we're getting close to the office. He tries that line again. And then, so we finally get to the last set of double doors before we get into the building where the office is at. I said, now, young man, when we walk through those double doors, you're never coming back to my class again. Ever. Because what we're going to do is we're going to go and take you to the principal. They're going to call your mom. And they're going to inform her that you are incorrigible. Do you know what that name means? That word means? He said, yeah, uncontrollable. I said, yeah, that's you. And I don't want you in my class if we go through those 2 doors. And I told him about his mom. His face went white as a sheet. He said, Mr. Garwood, please don't. I'll do. And he turned into a puddle.
Oh.
So I said, all right, we're going to go back to class. I'm not going to say another word about this. If this ever happens again, we're never having this discussion. You're just going. He said, okay. So so I corralled him. I'd broken the horse's spirit mm-hmm. and took him back to class. He obeyed, did all that kind of stuff. 3 or 4 weeks later, I always open a class with, who's got a dumb joke of the week? Open the floor. This one kid raised his hand to tell a dumb joke. Well, apparently it was not going to be a joke I was going to like because I wouldn't let them tell jokes that made fun of people.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You know, ethnicity, persuasion, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He raised his hand to tell a joke. And this kid that I had disciplined a couple weeks earlier threw an elbow like he was a hockey player. Well, boom. He says, don't do it. Don't do it. You won't like what happens next. Right. And he became a self-appointed master at arms in my class. Okay. And I think he graduated from college now. And he and I exchange emails every now and again. And a wonderful young man. Yeah. But that's why I like middle school kids, because you can squish them like a bug.
Figuratively.
Oh, of course, yes,
Yeah.
figuratively. Sure.
All right.
We'll use that word.
Yeah. So what are you working on now?
Oh, like I said, I'm working on my book, and my book is about the process of composing.
Okay.
That works for me.
Okay. If you
Um,
if you had to break that down into like an elevator pitch, what would that be?
One sentence.
Okay.
What in the world do you do when you don't know what to do?
Okay. Okay.
That was when I got to Vermont College of Fine Arts, and you know this because you were there with me.
Mhm.
I've always been a pretty big fish in every pond I've been in,
Mhm.
pretty big dog on whatever porch I've been on. I got up there, and we were in that first meet and greet in that downstairs cafeteria, and
Yeah.
a couple guys were playing. Aunt Jaffe was sitting at the piano.
Mhm.
Some other students are jamming with them. Bass player guy,
Max, I believe.
Max. Yes. Oh my God, what
Yeah.
a monster. So they're jamming, and all of a sudden I realized it's not that I didn't expect to be the biggest dog on the porch here.
Mhm.
But all of a sudden that went from that to I'm not even sure if I belong on this porch.
Right. Right. Well, I'll tell you my experience. I realized just how insignificant I was there when the first commercial came out.
Yeah.
And like I wasn't in anything. There was nothing,
Oh, me too. Yeah.
They do not want to brag about me at all.
Which is funny. You were one of the people that impressed me so much, just
Oh.
because I love what you did with those Indian instruments.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And the turban rock. You rock the turban.
Well, hey, I aim to please, but that means a lot to me, man. I appreciate that. Yeah.
So anyway, I was going to go back up to my room, get my bags, and call the taxi and leave. I was just to that point. And then this hippie looking dude, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He comes up to me.
I do.
Glasses on top of his head like this. No socks, jeans, flannel shirt. He's talking to me and says, well, what do you think? I said, I don't belong here. This is not for me. He said, I don't understand. I said, I just don't think I belong here. He said, well, Paige, we listened to your stuff and we think you belong here. I said, well, who are you? He said, oh, I'm sorry. Let me introduce. I'm Rick Bates, the head of the department. And I went, that's when I decided to stay, not because of his words to me, but because of the fact that he wasn't full of himself.
Oh, yeah.
No, he's so laid back.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge believer that corporate culture is set in place by senior management. People they can say whatever they want, but how they act, how they behave in the corporate world that you're part of, that sets the corporate culture. They can have all these fancy sayings they want, but if they're not living up to it, the culture is not going to. And so I thought, well, if the head of the department is this cool, even if I suck at everything I'm going to do, I need to be here. And then, of course, you meet the rest of the staff, and the rest of the staff was exactly like that. Yeah. I mean, there was no prima donnas there at all.
Right.
And so that was my introduction to VCFA. But then the real journey began because, again, even though I felt I belonged there, didn't I get the feeling that I don't think I can do anything here that's going to be worth listening to. And I started hearing people talking about, they would ask these questions. And I was like this little fly in the wall. I'm an introvert. I don't do great mixing with huge crowds of people. I can handle myself. I mean, I'm sociable, but I get my strength from being alone. And so when I'm in a big room full of people, you'll find me in a corner someplace. I don't like my back exposed. I have no idea why, just the way it is. But I started hearing these conversations. What's your process? How do you do it? And what they're asking is, how do you do what you do? Because Amanda Levin would bring in some stuff that she's working on for a video game, which to me, video games music is like, holy crap. Yeah. That's heavy duty stuff. And they would ask her, what's your process? How did you do that? And at that time, part of her favorite part of the process, she talked about, she had a room she liked to go, a special window seat that she would go to that would set it up so that the creative juices would flow and she'd be able to write music. So I knew I could compose music, but I didn't know how to compose music. That's, you know, that's about as zen as I'll get. But what I mean is, any musician at some point in their life is going to write a song. It's just because music's in you. And when you're inspired, music flows. And life's events, deaths, love's lost, love's gained, all this kind of stuff, they produce this really huge emotional stimulus. And many of us music types do self-therapy through music.
Mm-hmm.
It goes out. I just had a friend of mine pass away. I think you might have seen that in my Facebook page. He was the guy who built my guitar for me.
Oh, wow.
And a dear friend. And I think I'm the only one he ever built a guitar for. He was just doing it. It was just a glorious little hobby of his. And he was amazing. And I had him build me. He solved a problem with my left hand and built a guitar to fit my left hand. It's an amazing piece of engineering. And out of that experience comes a song. And so all of us have written music at one point to some degree or another, whether it's a pop song or a classical thing. But what I couldn't do was write music on demand. If you'd come up to me and say, hey, I want you to score this play for me.
Right.
Oh yeah, the deadline's in 4 weeks. Dude, I would turn it down because I'm not feeling anything in me that says write for a play.
Right.
You know, there's no inspiration happening here. But the thing I saw at VCFA was if composition is going to be part of your income stream,
right,
that's exactly what you have to do.
Exactly, right. And that was when it was actually at VCFA that I really figured out that film composing was not something that I enjoyed doing.
Oh, it's not for the faint of heart.
No. I mean, and I do it. I've, you know, just because there's so few things that, you know, where on the composing side that pays.
Yeah.
You know, but I met people there that were like, you know, that's what got their energy going, you know, is that they wanted to write for cinema. And I was like, I just, I don't see how this is rewarding, you know.
Well, again, that's the inspiration thing. You know, and you know this, when you're inspired, it's not work.
Right. That's true.
When the juices start going, whatever it is you're doing, whether you're painting or sculpting, dancing, whatever, when inspiration hits, it's like you're having an out-of-body experience, and you're just writing the notes down as fast as you can write them. And I'd experienced that with a couple of songs that I'd written, but it was like lightning. It would strike, and then nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. Something would strike, nothing. And I began to realize that my journey at VCFA was not so much about the music I was going to write, but the journey of getting to the point where I could write music at will.
Yeah.
That's what I was there for. So the stuff that I wrote there, you know, I go back. It's funny. I remember thinking how proud I was of all the stuff I wrote when I was there. I went back and listened to it.
Oh, I don't think that's fair.
It's totally fair. It's totally fair because I go back and listen to it. I'm going, but see, and again, since I've been writing since then, I've been rewriting that stuff.
Oh, okay.
But because what I wrote then, even though, yes, it was at the pinnacle of what I could do. Now I've gone up here a little bit just through practice, but I go back and listen to it. I'm going, that wasn't great. But at the moment, it was eye-poppingly great. I remember when they did my Kyrie. I was in tears. I was totally in tears. And Amanda Lehman, she came up and she punched me at the end of the performance. Because she had some problems with church growing up.
Yeah.
So she was pretty hard on the hypocrisy that she was saying, rightfully so, I think. So Amanda, if you listen to this, I agree with you.
Right.
But she came up and punched me, says, you took me to church.
Oh.
And highest praise ever.
Sure. Well,
But that was but again, it wasn't about the music I wrote.
right.
It was the journey I was on getting to the point where music happened.
And that's
That was
fair.
important.
For the record, I always thoroughly enjoyed, especially your vocal, works that were performed at VCFA. I thought that you did a fantastic job, with the pieces. But I wonder if we can talk about that, because you and I are both religious people.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I've always, or not always, I'm recently a religious person comparatively, but um,
No,
these
that's
days,
all right. Wait, the reason attracted to me to you as a friend was that you were one of the two honest atheists I'd ever
oh,
met.
right.
And
Yeah.
because you were an atheist
Mm-hmm.
as a result of empirical study
Right.
and thought and contemplation. You weren't angry at the church. You weren't angry at God. And the other atheist that I knew that was like that, he said, why should I be angry in something I don't believe exists?
Right. No,
And that was the dividing line. So I
yeah.
thought, finally, an honest atheist is within my circle of friends.
Right.
And which I took great, I saw that as a thing of great value
Mm-hmm.
because we were friends and we could say hard things
Mm-hmm.
and not walk away offended.
Right. No, and what's funny is it took me believing in God in order to be angry at God. In order to curse, in order to curse God, I had,
my friend, I know exactly what you're
yeah,
talking about.
yeah. But one of the I would say pillars of my conversion story is the transcendent element of creation.
Mm-hmm.
That and this is just how I feel about it, but one of the ways in which God breathed breath into humanity was to impart a spark of divinity in them, and we recreate that spark when we create art, for instance.
All right. Well, I'm that was interesting you say that because I just had a discussion with one of my students and I told him everything you need to know can be found in the major scale.
Okay.
7 notes. He said, really? I mean, just like that. Really? I said, yeah, really. Hang on a second. Let's see here. Siri, what is a square root of? No, I'm sorry. That's not the right answer. Question. Siri, what is 12 to the 12th power? She says it's 8.9 trillion.
Okay.
All right. Well, there's 12 notes in the musical world in a 1 octave.
Mm-hmm.
That means there's 8.9 trillion possible combinations.
Okay.
Of these 12 notes. Now, that's not even taken into consideration note duration, half notes, whole notes, quarter notes, all that kind of stuff. I told this kid, I said, now that's just 1 octave. We have 12 octaves,
Mm-hmm.
or 12 keys, I should say, and several octaves each. So I said, in essence, music is the closest thing to eternity that we have anything to do with until God takes us home.
That's fascinating
because it's basically limitless.
Right.
I said, how in the world do you think Taylor Swift can take 4 chords, 5 chords, if she's being really inventive, but yet churn out hit album after hit album after hit album? Why is it that country western with 3 chords,
mm-hmm.
all those guys, Waylon Jennings, Johnny Cash, Merle Haggard, all these folks would churn out album after album after album, and they'd be full of hit songs that the populace would adore?
Mm-hmm.
I said, because each one of those songs is unique.
Exactly. Well, I mean, and you could even take it a step further. How many songs from jazz to blues to rock and roll to country use 12-bar blues progressions? And exactly. And the funny thing is, that you can play like Wipeout right next to Pennsylvania. Yeah, I think Pennsylvania 65000 is a
Yeah.
12-bar blues. You can play both of those tracks right next to each other, and they're both 12-bar blues.
Have you seen that video of Uptown Funk where they bring all the old dance routines?
No, no,
Fred and oh, you've got to what Fred Astaire,
okay,
Ginger Rogers doing a tap routine, and Shirley Temple doing a tap routine,
okay,
and they they show and they're playing the Uptown Funk thing, and they have all these bygone artists of the bygone eras doing their dance routines. Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, all these people, but they're dancing to Uptown Funk,
okay,
a song that was written 60 years after they were in their heyday.
right.
And it's because I think there's core principles that are that are bedrock.
Yeah.
And our goal as musicians is to produce music that's pleasing to the ear, unless we're experimenting with something where we push the envelope with some of the atonal stuff, but I digress. But if our goal is to make music that's pretty,
right,
there's going to be common elements. And the thing is also is that music, like the 8.9 trillion possible combinations of a 12-note scale, there's something about music that puts you in touch with God. You know, and I don't understand the mechanics of it, but I know one of the reasons I've narrowed my focus for writing. I'm writing hymns, and I'm writing sacred music. Someday I'm going to write a mass. I swear I'm going to write a mass. But one of the things is that music becomes a form of meditation for me.
Agreed.
Because when you're composing, you're doing it at a snail's pace. It's note by note, phrase by phrase. I remember when I brought my Kyrie to VCFA, the mezzo soprano, I can't remember, her last name is Sharon, Cheron, beautiful young lady, Jewish girl from Boston. She asked me, she said, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yeah. Did you have a religious experience writing this?" And I said, "Wow, pretty perceptive." I said, "Yeah, I did." She said, "What happened?" I said, "I'm writing this." And, you know, Kyrie is just a simple, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy. Yeah. That's it. And I said, I'm sitting there, I'm writing, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy, Lord. And I just started thinking about how much I need God's mercy. How intrinsic his mercy is to me. If I don't have God's mercy, I don't have God's grace. I don't have God's grace, I am doomed. Period.
Right.
And I said, I got so overwhelmed by that I had to get up and walk away from the manuscript for a couple hours because I was just overwhelmed with the thought about the only reason I'm a believer, the only reason I'm saved is because God saved me, not because I was smart enough to get saved. Right. Because I'm not. I'm a dunce. and just that overwhelming thought. And that's what music does for me. When I'm considering a sacred text or I'm writing something like that, it's always a reflection on where I'm at with God at the moment. And I'm using that to work my way through whatever it is I'm dealing with. My friend passed away. The song I wrote was, I stand in awe when God calls his children home. Stand in awe when God calls his children home. And then I go on to say, I wonder what they see, what it's like, eternity unveiled. Will they fall to their knees and say, "Blessed be the Lamb of God, the one who takes away the sin of the world"? So my thought was, Michael was here one moment. He closed his eyes and he was in God's presence.
Right.
What's that moment like? Think about that. What is it like to show up in the presence of God with no sin, no anger, no bitterness, no fleshly problems like cataracts, heart disease, big boned? You know, what's it like to show up and not have and be done with the effects of sin in my life? So I spent a lot of time thinking about that kind of stuff, and that's where that song for Michael came about.
Right.
And so music is it. And I really think, I don't think you have to be a Christian for the music to affect you that way. I mean, God's reaching out to us at any number of different ways. Some people connect with God when somebody talks to them. I first connected with God through a song, a black full gospel choir, bringing down heaven on my shoulders. Purple robes, big black hanky wearing black lady, Hammond B3 organ.
Ah, well,
air sucking preacher, and the Lord said, and the organ, what?
Yeah.
And the bass player, and they're dancing and they're moving and they're grooving. I felt the glory of God. There's no other. So that's, to me, music is my gateway into experiencing the smallest snippet of the presence of God.
Right.
I'm sure we got off subject there.
That's okay. No,
that happens with me a lot.
I think that was perfectly on subject. I'm keeping you over a little bit. I hope that's okay. Maybe
it's totally okay.
Maybe we can we'll end on what was a realization that you came to in thinking about the book of how to write, when you weren't encountering the muse?
Okay. It's amazing. The secret is my voice. And I'm not a singer. I've been telling my guitar students and my bass students for years, play what you sing what you play. If you're doing let's see here.
It's very Indian of you, by the way.
Oh, very good. I feel honored. So if I'm doing like, so it's play what you sing what you play. And I got started doing that because of George Benson. I'm a George Benson fan. And a lot of times he does his guitar solos, he'll sing his guitar solos. So I learned a couple of his guitar solos, and then I learned to sing them while I was playing my guitar. Cool enough. I'm at a jam session one night on the bass and say, "You want a bass solo?" I said, "Sure." And I don't know what possessed me, but I stepped up to the microphone and I started singing, starting to do something like that. And my hands were going where my voice was taking me. There was no conscious thought. It was just voice. And I was like, freaking out.
Yeah.
And then later on, VCFA, about 10 years after that time, I'm at VCFA and the thought hit me. This is the most revolutionary thought in the world. Improvisational playing, soloing, is composing at the speed of light.
Yep.
Composing is soloing at a snail's pace. Right? It's the same principles are being used. Even you skip up, step down. I mean, the basic rule of writing a melody. You skip up, you step down. You skip down, you step up, kind of thing. I started to incorporate that into my soloing, and my soloing got better. But then all of a sudden I noticed that my voice was leading my hands. So I thought, well, why can't I let my voice lead my pen?
Right.
And I know, see, this is the part where everybody says, "What, you're just now discovering that?" Well, yeah, like I said, I'm slow. Doesn't mean I'm not good. No, I'm just slow. But what would happen was I learned to write a cantus firmus, and you've heard me talk about this 18 million times, and a single species first species counterpoint. And that's great. All right, you've just written 9 bars or something with whole notes. But what happens after 9 bars? So what I would do was I thought, well, I know what happens when I sing and solo. Let's see what happens here. So I would sing the melody that I wrote. And then when the computer got to the end of that melody line and it would stop, I would just keep singing.
Nice.
Just whatever was in my head. No thought, just stream of consciousness type thing. And so if I wrote a line that went like, ba-da-da-da-da-bum, can't help but swing. And that's where I stopped. I would go, all right, I mark it down. Ba-da-da-da-da-da. And then I would go, and then when it stopped, I'd keep singing. So it'd be like, ba-da-da-da-da-bum, ba-da-bum, ba-da-da-da-bum. And 99% of the time, whatever came out of my mouth was right. Right. And that was what broke the dam down. That's what broke the dam and the water come flooding out. Because now I realize, you've been listening to music for 50 years. Yeah. Your brain hangs on to everything. Everybody has photographic memory. We don't know how to develop the photograph is what the problem most of us have.
Okay.
We don't know how to tap into it. For me, it's singing. and it's, which is part of it. He says that's dumb because I'm not a singer, but my voice is intrinsically related. It's connected to that part of my brain that I don't see consciously. I guess that's the only way I can say it. And so when I'm composing, I'll write. And I get to the point where it ends, and I don't know what to do. I sing along with it, and then when it stops, I just keep going. And bam, I'm off to the races. It's like now every song I write starts off as a musical exercise. It starts off with a cantus firmus and first reaches counterpoint. And I've spent the time since VCFA learning how to adapt that to modern scoring, modern writing, modern songs, lyrical writing, that kind of thing. But the one principle that stays the same is write until you don't know what to do, and then sing.
Okay.
And that's in a nutshell. Now, that won't sell many books. So, I mean, I've got to make it longer than that.
That's right. But that's...
There'll be pictures and everything.
Yeah. Well, no, but I think that I don't know if it's just like a Western world thing, but you know, the way that we discourage people from using their voices, you know, and the importance of singing, like for instance, I one of the trends that just drives me nuts in modern music are these beat producers who will just create like background tracks and send them to singers with the expectation that the singers will know what to do. Sometimes great songs emerge from that, but normally what I hear are two disjointed, you know, almost seemingly unrelated things.
It's like one is dancing a samba, the other one's trying to waltz.
Exactly. Yeah. And whereas I feel like if these beat producers would just learn how to sing, you know, or even learn how to rap or learn how to, you know, then they would understand the process, you know, of like of melody. And but that's my old man moment.
Yeah, you know? Get off the lawn.
I know. Talking about these damn kids.
One of the things that struck me as so odd, coming out of VCFA, is I expected I was going to be writing symphonic things, orchestral things, which I still do on occasion. But I found myself pulled into the choral world, which is weird because I've never been a choir guy. But because the thing with my voice propelling my writing, I started singing more, and I've developed a pretty good sense of near perfect pitch. Oh, wow. I can listen to something on the radio and get within a step of it.
Nice.
And it makes transcribing things almost instantaneous. Yeah. And the reason is because you know, this music is based on thirds. You know, the major triad, major third and then a minor third on top of it. Everything's based on thirds. So as you sing all these popular melodies, you sing your exercises, you're just imprinting those, even if it's unconscious, you're imprinting musical concepts in your brain, and your brain uses that. So when you hear something on the radio, if you sing what you play and play what you sing, I swear, within 2 to 3 years, you're going to be listening to something on the radio, and you're going to go, I know what they're doing.
Right. No, that's a good point. Yeah. And especially like, you know, for hearing chord progressions also, and just overall digestion of what you're hearing. Yeah. Well, man, Paige, I thoroughly enjoyed. In a way, this was just kind of like catching up for us because it's.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm ready to. I'm getting back into working my way back through the Gospel of John. So if you ever want to jump on that train again down the road, let me know.
I would love to. Yeah. I think that's a great idea. Actually,
you're not so much fun now that you're a believer. You were more fun when you're an atheist.
Yeah. I'm older too, so you know, I'm more.
You're mature.
Right.
We'll keep that secret between us. Nobody needs to know.
There you go. All right. Well, you take care, Paige.
All right. Be good, my friend. I love you. Be good.
Love you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.